What's up? What's up? What's up? Welcome to the Ken Patterson Show, guys. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for being here. Uh, yeah, man. What about these politics, man? What about politics? And why, as Americans, do we still um, argue about these things? Why haven't we figured out yet that this system is a rigged system? Um, it's two wings of the same bird. I I can't figure out why we don't understand that this system, no matter who we vote for, no matter who we put in office, um, they don't work for us. Um, I don't know when this became. Well, I guess this has always been the slave colony, right? They so-called freed black people, black slaves from, that gruesome, brutal slavery that they had implemented for black people. But they still have this whole country. Every citizen of this nation is a slave, whether you want to admit that or not, whether you realize that or not. You are a slave, especially if you go to work every day and pay taxes and all of that. They fooled us into believing that us paying taxes was somehow for the greater good of this country, but our tax dollars go overseas to other places. They go overseas to places like Israel and Tel Aviv, and those are beautiful cities. And they go overseas to fight wars, but and they launder the money. They steal our money. They steal our money, and I don't understand how we just keep buying into this kind of system. How we just don't come together and say, you know what, we're not going to do this shit anymore. We're not going to keep on taking this kind of treatment from our government. And if we don't stand up soon, I mean, it's going to, things are only getting worse. Um, Donald Trump did not come back in office and make things better. Donald Trump, unfortunately, in my opinion, is also bought and paid for, also compromised. Even though I voted for Donald Trump in 2020 and in 2024. And the reason I voted for him in 2020 is because he did such a great job from 2016 to 2020. So I felt like he deserved another term in 2020. And this is while I'm still under the spell of politics and this system and thinking that because I thought in his first term that he was a real America first, people first kind of president. That's what I thought he did in his first term. That's what made me vote for him again in 2024 and in 2020, right? I didn't vote for him in 2016. I didn't vote for Hillary Clinton either. I didn't, feel that Donald Trump was a viable candidate. I didn't think that definitely didn't think that Hillary Clinton was a viable candidate. And but I did vote for Donald Trump in 2020, and I felt like he should have won in 2020. I felt like that whole election was rigged. I felt like that thing was stolen right in our faces. I mean, it was just too many anomalies, too many very strange anomalies that happened. And then, it was just all kinds of evidence showing fraud all over the place. So I felt like he was robbed in 2020. So I voted for him again. So between 2020 and 2024, I was telling anybody that I knew, Donald Trump that election was stolen, that, Donald Trump was a good president. I tried to explain, his track record from his first term to different people, just, black people, my neighbors and my family and that kind of stuff. But so I was really, going to bat for Donald Trump. I started my podcast really just because of all the stuff that I saw that was going on in the country with the stolen election, and then Joe Biden and his son Hunter Biden and all the shit that they were into. So I started my podcast just to, be a voice. I didn't know if I was going to have any kind of following or anything, but I wanted to see, I wanted to at least, use my voice to speak out against what I thought was, a travesty. I thought was, robbery and a crime and all that stuff that is supposed to be, when you steal an election, that's treason, right? So I spent, my podcast, I did, I don't know, maybe 30, 35 episodes, and I was, very hard on the Biden administration, very, very hard on the Biden administration, and rightfully so. They deserved every bit of it because that was the most incompetent administration in the history of our nation. Never seen a press secretary as bad as that girl. Can't even think of her name now, but never seen a show like the one we saw with Joe Biden. So when it came back around and Trump was running again, I definitely knew that Donald Trump was the more competent candidate, right? I knew he was, much more cognizant than Joe Biden. All the stuff, Joe Biden was a mess, and I can't believe that they were marching this guy out there like they were doing. But anyway, I spent, all those episodes, digging into the Joe Biden crap, talking about all the bribes and the money laundering and all the stuff that they were doing, and just all the abuse of power that they had going on in that administration. So I talked a lot about that, So I just felt like when Trump came back around in office, I thought that he was going to be the guy that he was the first time around. I just thought he was going to do more of what he did the first time around. So, and he talked big. He did the right stuff when he was campaigning. He said all the right things when he was campaigning. So, I was excited about another Trump administration. I was excited about another Trump term. And when he won, I was happy about that. I thought, he was going to pick right up where he left off with the WHO and the CDC and NATO and all that stuff. But he has he has a weakness, right? He has one weakness, and I think that all of these politicians in Washington D.C. all have the same weakness. They all have Israelitis, and they all fear that little small nation over there and what they have on our politicians and why our politicians bend the knee to these people. I don't understand. I don't understand it. So it turns out, Donald Trump, in my opinion, is also bought and paid for. He's also compromised and owned by Israel. And this is why we see, all the stuff that, he was supposed to be the president of peace and stop the wars. And, but he came right in bombing Iraq, bombing Iran, not Iraq, but bombing Iran. Now he's taken and kidnapped the Venezuelan president and, stealing their oil and their gold and their resources. And people think that's okay. People are cheering that on. And I don't want us to cheer that on because that's against international law to go into a sovereign nation and steal their president. That is not the way you do things. That is not how we should be doing things here. But this is the most corrupt nation on the planet, hands down. This is the most corrupt nation on the planet. There's not even a nation close. Okay, there's not even a nation close. They'll tell you that that there are these corrupt nations in Africa and every other place, more corrupt than here, but that's all propaganda. When you go to those places and you listen or you talk to those people there, this is not the way it is there. This America is the only place that this shit happens. So, be comfortable in knowing that, that this is the only place that we get robbed, every week, every 2 weeks, however often it is that you get paid. So, it's unfortunate, man. It's unfortunate that Donald Trump turned out to be a dud. Also, um, and just bending the knee to Netanyahu and Israel, and he's spineless, in my opinion. And so are the presidents before him. Don't get it wrong. Don't get it twisted. Um, Democrats are the worst. They are a different kind of terrible. They really are. I think at least with Republicans, they try to have a grounded base, right? They try to have, they try to make Christianity the forefront of their their movement, right? So, people think, because they do that they think that, they're somehow better than Democrats, but the Republicans are just as bad as the Democrats, if not worse than the Democrats, because they hide behind Christianity while they do all this devilish shit, So it's funny to me, but I have to admit that I bought in. I drank the Kool-Aid, and I was going hard for Donald Trump. I was pulling for Trump, and I still, like I said, because we live here, we have to kind of deal with whatever that is, and you want the person in power to be, somebody that you respect, and somebody that you trust, and none of that stuff. I don't feel like I respect Donald Trump. I don't feel like I trust Donald Trump. I definitely don't trust Donald Trump. I know I don't trust Donald Trump. So, or any president before him, Barack Obama was the worst. He was just horrible. And of course, Joe Biden was, not even running the country, right? He had the phantom pen and all that stuff. So, it's amazing to watch. And then it's funny because I watched, I watch YouTube, and I watch, and I'm on TikTok and stuff like that to try to keep myself abreast to kind of what happens, in other culture and what people are saying in politics and that kind of stuff. So but it really is amazing to me to watch people argue politics. It's amazing to watch people argue politics. Even, it's funny to hear Democrats, talk about Kamala Harris and Joe Biden like they just can't do any wrong. They are the best. They're the greatest. And then the same thing with conservatives. Donald Trump is the greatest. He's the best. And when you talk to a Democrat about Trump, oh God, he's the worst thing since, the plague. And the opposite is the same with Republicans about Democrats. They say the same things about each other, to the media. So, and that's just to keep, us divided. That's to keep the people divided. You have to choose a side. Are you on the right side or on the left? Or are you with all this, crazy nonsense, LGBTQ and trans and bi and gay, and are you with all of that shit, or are you over here with the family, the nuclear family, the husband, the wife, the child, which is the side that Republicans try to act like they are on, but at the same time they have a lot of homosexuals in their base as well. So, and I mean, hey, I'm not knocking any of it. I don't agree with it, but I don't give a shit what you do, how you want to live. That's not my business. But anyway, it's amazing to watch people argue these topics and debate about which side is better and which side is right. While meantime they all sit at the same gentleman's club and have drinks and play poker and shit like that, and laugh at us, while they steal our money. They are robbing us, and we are standing by and just sitting by and letting that happen, But, and I know you should, because we all probably ask ourselves, well, what is the solution? What do we do? But whatever it is, we have to do it collectively. We're not going to get anywhere divided and arguing about left, right, who's better and who's worse and not. This is about good and evil, man. This is what this has come down to. This is about good and evil, and that's what we have to choose. Those are the choices that you have to make. You have to get on the side of good or the side of evil, and it's we're in crunch time, right? We're getting closer and closer to a point of no return for us and civilization, right? This nation here has had its run and it's probably on its way out, but it's going to be up to the people here to decide what that looks like for you. What does that look like for you? Because the way this stuff is run and the way things happen here can't continue. This kind of cycle can't continue. This is a destructive and dangerous cycle that we're in. So if this kind of stuff keeps up, and when you start talking about wickedness in high places, which we are talking about when we talk about these administrations and these politicians and the evil things that they do, this is worse than wickedness in high places. But that's the beginning of the end when the powers that be are wicked, and the attitude reflects the leadership. The attitude of the people reflects the leadership. So that means that everybody is wicked, right? So because there are no holds barred, there are no rules. It's an anything goes kind of society here, and so that is chaos, and it means that this is a society that is on its way out. We can't have this kind of chaos. We can't have this kind of immoral behavior. And that takes me to Venezuela and Maduro, and how pornography is banned in that country, and so are the Rockefeller and the Rothschild banking cartel. So this is what all this is about, right? This is why that man has been removed by force from his own country. He's the president, and he's been taken. What if somebody came into the United States acting like they were going to take Donald Trump somewhere? What price would they have to pay if that happened? They'd have hell to pay. It would never stop raining bombs on the country that did that shit. So what we did over there is nothing to be proud of. And this is what all of this shit is about. This is about the Rothschild and Rockefeller banking cartels wanting to be in that country. They're not allowed there. So this is what this shit is about. They're small enough for us to just go bully and take. China and Russia are the same, but we can't kidnap Vladimir Putin. They wish they could. We can't kidnap Xi Jinping. So that's the only difference in Venezuela and China and Russia, is that they knew that they could probably go over there and bully the shit out of these people and bring the man out of there and make him stand trial and charge him with all this false shit, calling him a narco terrorist. That's a new one. You know what I mean? Like, what the hell? A narco terrorist. But they'll give you any label that they need to give you to make you guilty. So what they did there, man, that should make Donald Trump a fucking war criminal. Really. And Netanyahu is definitely a war criminal. And wanted by the international courts. And we keep on covering for this good dude and inviting him here to speak to our Congress, and they stand up for every fucking sentence and give a standing ovation for every sentence. Like, this is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Right here in the United States of America, our Senate, our Congress, just the whole House just fucking standing up every time this dude says anything. And this just lets you know that who's in charge, man. This lets you know who is in charge of this place. Donald Trump is not running this place. And I don't know who he is really. We know who it is. We know who's really in control. We know who's in power here. We know who runs and controls these politicians here. That's not a secret. I don't think. And and plenty of other and plenty of politicians have said this, in the past. Their careers are, they're not politicians anymore because they spoke out about this stuff, and so and anybody who does speak out about it is, immediately on the cancel list, and that's what they're trying to do. But I think what happened with Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens is the fact that they were too big already. They were bigger than the influence uh, of this cabal, right? So they couldn't squash them out. They couldn't stop them from doing what they were doing, especially in this age, right? With podcasting and streaming and that stuff. People can be heard, people can be seen, and all it takes is for them to get out there and for people to like what they're saying, or people to like what they have to say. So thank God that they didn't, they weren't able to eliminate Candace Owens's voice and Tucker Carlson's voice, because those voices are needed, right? They're needed right now, because without them, you get this oversaturation of propaganda from the other side, from lies, basically. And so when you don't know the whole story, or you haven't heard the other side, you don't have all of the facts to form a strong opinion about it, right? You don't have you need all the facts so that you can form an opinion, and you can base your opinion on the facts. You can form an opinion on the facts. Any opinion should be based in the facts, right? Any opinion. So, I mean, otherwise you just, you're just blowing smoke, right? You're just blowing smoke. So if you're gonna have an opinion, you ought to have the facts, right? So, it's but yeah, we're gonna get, the American people, I think, are waking up. I think we realize that um, we're getting screwed. I'm hearing more and more people talk about the fact that we are divided by the dumbest things, while they continue to just misuse us, man. They misuse us. They rob and steal from us. Um, and I think more and more people are waking up to that. How we pull out of this system, I don't know, but I think, we have to start having those kind of conversations, man, because this thing is going to crumble. This thing is crumbling. The way you see them grandstanding through the world, threatening Greenland, Canada, South America, and this is just their last ditch effort, guys. This is their last ditch effort, but we have to hold strong. We have to fight. We have to fight this evil, right? This is absolutely evil, what they really have planned for us, what they want to do to us. So we have to be, you know, in a collective mental state, right? We have to all be thinking the same thing, the same way. And if we all are doing that, then the good things will happen. I mean, now when we start doing all the things that we need to do on an individual basis, then that means that the collective is already doing it, right? If we're doing it on an individual basis, the collective is already doing it. So we just have to figure out what that's going to be, what we can do as a collective. I mean, it's gonna, I know we won't be 300 million people in America to even consider this option or whatever, but we need a mass, the vast majority of Americans to sign on to whatever plan that is to get us, divorced from this system, and figure out how we continue to thrive as a people, because it's the people who built this place. It's us. It's not the government. The government didn't build this shit. We built this. The people built this. So it is up to us to it's up to us to um, continue um, or figure out how we continue to grow. I'm sorry, guys, I was distracted there, but it's up to us to figure out how we um, continue to be a thriving nation without this government, or by putting a whole new one in place. Guys, this is where we are. This is our government is tyrannical. And you don't think so because they're not beating you over the head with clubs and sticks, but they are tyrannical because of how they abuse you mentally and financially. That's tyrannical, and they stand it on everything is censored now. You can't say anything anywhere. I've tried. I'm on these news sites, and I try to comment on some of these news stories or whatever. Oh, my comments don't meet community guidelines for whatever reason. But I mean, that's censorship, and it's all the way across the board. TikTok does it. I know Facebook does it. I'm not even on Facebook anymore. Haven't been in years. TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, X, all of that shit. They all censor you if you don't say what they want you to say the way they want you to say it. Okay, so that right, our First Amendment right, is already being infringed upon. They want to do something about the Second Amendment. They wish they could. They want to throw out the Constitution, guys. Basically, they want to throw out the Constitution so that they can just run rampant over us. And my hope is that the men and women in our military, the real American men and women in our military, would not turn their guns on American citizens. But ICE just shot a woman in the face, an American woman in the face, 3 times. So I don't know what they might do. We don't know what they might do. But as a people, it's really the people. If there's going to be sides to choose, it should be the people against the government, not black against white, or black against Hispanics and whites against Hispanics. That should never be. That we should not be fighting each other. We should not be letting them make us fight each other. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. But we let them push us right where they want us because we stay too indulged. We stay too. We're on social media. We're watching their television shows. We're listening to their music, and it's all a spell. It's all a spell. Literally a spell. It's literally a spell. And we're in it. We're stuck there. So, I mean, I think we can save ourselves, but it's going to be up to us. It's going to be up to each individual to save themselves. And then when we start to save ourselves individually, then automatically that is the collective saving itself, right? When we start to think on a higher level of consciousness, when we start to think about raising the level of consciousness for the entire planet, just your vibration, your positive vibration, or your good mood is a great vibration for the planet. It puts the planet on a better frequency. Everybody that's smiling is putting the planet on a good frequency. You understand? So that's what it's all about, frequency and vibration. That's what all of this is about. And trying to ascend to a higher consciousness, a higher vibration, a higher frequency, because we are just, spiritual beings having a human experience, right? And they don't want us to understand that. They don't want us to know that we are eternal. They don't want us to know that we are eternal. There's nothing coming back to save you. There's nothing coming back to take you away to a heaven or something. Not a Jesus anyway. So I don't, come in all you want. Eat the comments alive, you know what I mean? So I'll gladly respond to any comments, but if you have done any real research about religion, you understand why I made that statement. So I'm gonna leave that right there. But my point is that there is a crown consciousness that we want to get ourselves to, a place where we are leading with love. We're leading with peace. And that's the way a real leader, a true leader leads like that. A true leader leads with diplomacy. Not, oh, if you don't do what I say, I'm gonna kick your ass. That's not gonna fly every time, because somebody's always up to the bully, right? Somebody's always up to the bully. I can remember being in 8th grade, and this cat was bullying me. I was kind of small, a little small then, and this cat was bullying me, and every day in gym, like he's giving me issues. We playing basketball, and he just, giving me the blues, man. So this one day, I don't know what happened. I think I had just had enough, and I made a shot, and the dude just pushed me in the, I didn't even see it coming or nothing like that. He pushed me in the back, pushed me hard as he could. I felt like, he pushed me, and he pushed me down. Well, actually, into the, we had those little rubber mats up on the wall or whatever. He pushed me into the mats. And so after he pushed me, I turned around and I clocked his ass. I hit him right in the nose. And, his nose started bleeding. He started crying. And so, but at that point, after he got cleaned up and we got in trouble in gym and stuff, Coach Hill, did his thing. We got paddled then. So we did that. And, so this guy, I won't say his name, although I do remember his name from the 8th grade, which was 45 years ago for me. So anyway, 46 years ago for me. But anyway, the guy was talking about, hey, I want to get with you at lunch. I'll see you on the blacktop. Okay, well, I'll see you on the blacktop at lunchtime. So anyway, but at that point, I wasn't afraid anymore. I stood up to the bully. And that's just what I'm saying. My point of telling that story is that somebody's going to stand up to the bully. Somebody's going to stand up to the United States, if not the world, because they have pissed off the world. Everywhere we've been, we've caused turmoil and trouble in the name of democracy that never comes, in the name of peace and comfort that never comes for these countries where we're telling them we're bringing democracy to them. It never comes to those people. So I don't understand. I don't understand. And it's our money, that they act like they're going into these countries with and doing this stuff, But all our money does is build bombs. That's what they use our money for, to pay Lockheed Martin and those guys, Halliburton and those guys. That's what they use our money for. And those guys in turn filter that money right back to these guys. I did a story last year before, where there was a story where I did showing how they actually steal our money through these government contracts, and how they, overinflate cost, and they make these deals with these corporations in order to, and the deals with the corporations are, hey, guys, we're going to tell the people, the American people, that it cost us $1 billion to do this, but in all actuality, it cost us $1 million to do this shit. And so we're going to keep the change, and we're going to split the change with you guys, with the company. So we'll send, $500 million. You guys shoot that other $500 million back to us, so we can split it up between us and our cronies. So I did a story on that. So this is how they rip us off. It's guaranteed. They steal our money, and they pay themselves. You don't go to Congress and make $120,000, $130,000 a year and be worth $30 million in 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. That's ridiculous. You are stealing somewhere. Somewhere you're stealing. They do insider trading, and nothing's ever done about that, right? We had all this evidence to fraud in this election, man. We had all kinds of evidence to the feds setting up that insurrection. We had all kinds of evidence to Joe Biden and Hunter Biden taking all these bribes and just stealing and quid pro quo, and all of this kind of shit. So we had evidence of all of these things, and nothing was done about it, and nothing is ever going to be done about it until we decide we want something to be done about it. It's going to take us to do something about it. These people do not care, and they will not stop. Criminals will not stop. Criminals will not stop. You keep letting them rob you and rob you and rob you and never do anything, they will not stop robbing you. They're criminals. They're criminals. Okay? So we have to get that, we have to keep that in mind as Americans. We have to keep that in mind, guys. Um, so, we're gonna do some more stuff, man. We're gonna talk about a lot of stuff in the coming shows and coming episodes and stuff. It's good to be back, man. It's good to be back talking to people, and my attitude has changed. So the show, the content is gonna be a little bit different because, it's not gonna be pro right or pro left. I'm gonna tell the truth, regardless of who's guilty of any kind of corruption or wrongdoing or whatever. I'm gonna talk about that stuff, man, and I'm not gonna choose sides, because I see people being unapologetically Trump, followers and worshipers, no matter what he does, and the same thing is true for Democrats. You have Democrats that back Democrats no matter what craziness and foolishness they're pushing, whatever, they'll back any agenda that they're pushing, and it's the same thing for the right. People on the right do the same thing. So we just have to get to a place as Americans, man, to just where we're fed up, man. We're tired, and I think the time is coming. I think the time is close, but we just have to get there. We have to get to a place where we say, listen, man, we need to shut this place down until we get some act right out of our own government, right? Or we will install a new one. That's just where we have to be with the people. And if we're not there, then we'll just keep on getting what we get. So anyway, man, on that note, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here, close it down, shut it down. I think, one more thing I did want to add is I kind of was watching that Corey Holcomb and Anton Daniels squab, and after initially I thought, man, this is crazy, and I still think that it was crazy for it to even have happened. You know what I mean? Because I think when two grown men are talking, there are certain things that two grown men don't say to each other, right? Like you don't let another grown man call you a bitch, or the stuff that he said, because I don't even want to repeat it. I was telling my wife the story about it the other night, and she was just so offended by me saying the words. So I'm not even going to repeat it. But you've seen it, right? So you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm talking about. But and that's a line that you don't cross with a man, right? But at the same time, when you're in a professional setting, such as a podcast or on somebody's set or something like that, you have to handle things better, and I think the dialogue should have been a lot more professional and intellectual, and maybe I did see a follow-up now, and so I didn't see the whole interview between the whole exchange or the whole show between Anton and Corey Holcomb. I just saw that segment where all the stuff started, right? So, but anyway, after I saw, that a follow-up where Anton was having a conversation with some other guy who's, kind of a big influencer, and he was saying that, I noticed that you were intellectually superior to the guy, and any time that you were saying anything intellectual, he kind of deflected off of that, and got back to the kind of street hood and doing what he does, right? That's his format. That's what he does. He comes on and he critiques people and he talks about them. He says what he wants to say about what they got going on in their lives. So, hey, and people follow him to see that, you know what I'm saying? So it is what it is, but I'm just glad that, they didn't actually come to blows. And I said that to say too, that, when you're a real man, you don't have to, talk loud and bolster and and you don't have to be easily offended by words, man. You know, like real men can have discussions where you can talk about this stuff and you can go on, you know, and really, I think the whole thing was just, you know, a little bit disrespectful, you know, for on both sides, from both parties, you know. But I'm glad, like I said, that they didn't come to blows, and that, you know, everybody made it home safe and all that good stuff, man. But yeah, man, we can't continue to act like that, man. We have to be um, um, more loving and more caring and more compassionate to one another, man. That's it. You know, that's the bottom line. We can't continue to embarrass ourselves like that, you know, and be taken seriously and want to be taken seriously. It's just not. It doesn't fit. Okay, so anyway, that's my spill on that. But I love y'all, man. I appreciate y'all listening. Thank y'all so much. And it's great to be back, man. It's the Ken Patterson Show. Thank y'all. Thank y'all. Thank y'all. Have a great night. Peace.